Let us find the Bible. And let us turn in our Bibles to Isaiah 11. And whoever finds it first gets an award today.
602.
Page 602. The prophet writes, "A shoot shall come out from the stump of Jesse, and a branch shall grow out of its roots. The Spirit of the Lord shall rest on him, the Spirit of wisdom and understanding, the Spirit of counsel and might, the Spirit of knowledge and the fear of the Lord. His delight shall be the fear of the Lord. He shall not judge by what his eyes see, or decide by what his ears hear. But with righteousness he shall judge the poor, and decide with equity for the meek of the earth. He shall strike the earth with the rod of his mouth, and with the breath of his lips he shall kill the wicked. Righteousness shall be the belt around his waist, and faithfulness the belt around his loins." The word of the Lord. Thanks be to God. So our reading, as we continue in the narrative lectionary, last week, thanks for Heritage for coming and doing such a fantastic service, the women's shelter service. And hopefully you've stayed up with the readings in the sheets. And so you were able to read Hosea, the prophet Hosea. If you remember, after King David and King Solomon, that was the golden period of a unified Israel. And then Solomon's son took the throne. How good was that? Not very much. In fact, it divided the kingdom. And so one tribe of Israel, the tribe of Judah and Aaron, who were the priestly, stayed in the southern part, which contained Jerusalem. And then the rest of the tribes went up into the northern part, become the kingdom of Israel. So there was a divided kingdom. There was the kingdom of Israel in the north and the kingdom of Judah in the south. And they hated each other. And the king of Israel in the north, he became king because the prophet told him, King Solomon has strayed. As he married all the wives, he brought their gods with them. And they worshiped those gods along with the God of Israel. So God told the prophet, you will be the king of the north, and you will make sure that everybody worships God, the one God. What happened? That's not what happened. He was very quick to bring in the worship of Baal. So we have now these two kingdoms that are just falling away quickly and crumbling and is in disarray. And the people don't know the way of the Lord anymore. They are forgetting the stories of their ancestors. They're forgetting about Abraham and Isaac and Sarah and Rebekah. They're forgetting about Moses. They're forgetting about the law, the 12 commandments. They are forgetting about the adventure of going from Egypt into the land of milk and honey. They are forgetting their identity. They're forgetting who they are. Both the kingdom of Israel and the kingdom of Judah. Last week, if you were reading with the narrative lectionary, you would have read about the prophet Hosea. Hosea is a contemporary of the prophet Isaiah. Hosea and Isaiah. Sounds very similar, don't they? Hosea was in the north. And Hosea is prophesizing that if things don't turn around, if the people of God don't change, if you don't remember who you are, don't remember the story about God's work and that God is present and that there is the God that brought us out of Egypt, this God of liberation, this God that said, I am the king, why do you want a human king? If we remember that God, things will change. As Hosea was saying, that the Assyrians are at our gates. The work of a prophet is basically to read the context, really, and then proclaim to the people, we need to do something different, or else this will happen. And so Hosea was saying, we need to change our ways, or else the Assyrians are going to come in and destroy this kingdom. When the prophet Isaiah starts writing as a contemporary of Hosea, things are pretty much going down the bad road for the northern kingdom. The Assyrians are taking over. This kingdom of Israel is gone. The prophet Isaiah is saying to the people in Jerusalem, the king and the priests and all the people of that southern area in Judah, saying, listen, examine our way of life. Remember the story of God. Remember this way. If you don't change the ways that you're doing, our ways of doing things, what happened in the northern kingdom is going to happen in the southern kingdom. And the whole book of Isaiah, which is, it's actually like 4 movements. And it is what we call the school of Isaiah, because the prophet Isaiah is the first part, which is saying this truth-telling about the Assyrians coming. And then after that, it's the Assyrians kept trying to take over Judah and trying to defeat them, and it took many generations, and that's why we have actually a school of Isaiah. There's 4 other writers in the book of Isaiah, but we keep hearing the same message over and over and over again. We need to do something different. Remember God, remember God, remember the story, remember who you are, remember your core values, your practices. Remember, remember, remember. You'll find strength in that. And out of that unity of sharing that story, we be able to maintain and be retained as the kingdom of Judah. Our first reading today from the 5th chapter of Isaiah is the prophet saying basically that. This is actually called the Song of Isaiah, of the Vineyard. Every generation we have songs. This is a song. Think about all the songs in your generation, the ones that were popular. There is always in music, in popular culture, in popular music, somebody singing a song about our current context. It's prophetic. For the 60s, something blowing in the wind.
The Answer.
The Answer. They're in rap. You hear criteria or criticism about culture and about what needs to happen. And it's very poetic. We can find in music very similar things that we see here in Isaiah. Isaiah puts out this, I call it a country western song. He puts it out as, talking about his land, the vineyard, about how beautiful the vineyard is. And the singer talks about it. And then we start hearing then the twist is that the vineyard is the people of God. God planted the people in this place. God was doing everything that you should do for a vineyard, watering it, giving it sustenance, rain, sunshine, love. And yet, as the song says, as the country western song says, they did them wrong. And so, there's retribution. And I believe that there's a country western song about a jilted woman who takes her key to the car of the guy that she's dating. Something very similar. But the part of it is that we want to focus on is about how did the vineyard go wrong? Right there in verse 7. God expected justice, but there was bloodshed. righteousness. But there was a cry of distress. In Hebrew, this is really pretty because the author is playing off of wordplay. Justice and bloodshed sound very similar in Hebrew. And it's beautiful. But justice, God expected justice. When we think of justice, what does that look like? When we think of justice today, what does that look like? Freedom. And we hear in some of the other prophets that were before Hosea and Isaiah, is that, Micah, to walk humbly with your God, to love justice, to walk humbly with your God. There's this seeking of the other to make sure that everybody has food, clothing. There's necessities that somebody is not being cheated out because I want to prosper and have the most toys in my box at the expense of you. Think about justice. What does justice look like? What does justice sound like? And then the flip of justice, if there's no justice, there's bloodshed. There is a slaying of people. There's murder of people. Body, mind, and soul. If there is not justice. In righteousness is very similar to justice, but righteousness, it's about ethics, morals. What is it that's in the core of our being, our core values that lead us to care for one another, to care for the earth, to care for anything of God's creation? Righteousness, to follow in the footsteps of God. God expected righteousness, but there were cries of distress. That is the flip side. When we don't have moral and ethical leadership, as my Harvard class talked about with the moral leadership, we make decisions not about the good and the best for one, but for all, as best as we can. We come from a base of core values. So the prophet Isaiah is saying that you need to get back to doing justice and righteousness, to live your core values, your practices, to be who God has called you to be, that beautiful vineyard. If that doesn't happen, well, what happens up in the northern kingdom is going to happen here in the southern kingdom. Wow, what a storm cloud. You feel hope yet? But here's the thing about God. And this is where we get into the 11th chapter of Isaiah. In that 11th chapter of Isaiah, there is a time within the season of the church that we actually read from Isaiah, especially the 11th chapter. We actually sang part of this next section this morning. When do we hear this part of Isaiah in the church here? Advent. Advent, which, we have the liturgical color of blue, the color of hope. That even though there shall be these destructions of things based on our choices, that there will be death and bloodshed and distress, that there is suffering and there is pain, that everything is collapsing around us that we thought we loved and enjoyed, that we think that we are abandoned by God, there is still this small voice saying, "But I am with you. I have always been with you, and I will never not be with you. Out of the stump of Jesse shall come a shoot." A sign of life, a sign of growth, a sign of new beginning. Out of all the pain and distress that you have in your life, God is with you and God is moving with you to see what is yet to come, that God will redeem out of grace, out of nothing that you do, just out of pure love. God will redeem the pain and the frustration and the destruction and the bloodshed, and God will lift up a new hope, a new way of life, a new way so that we know where to go from here. Hope is a very powerful gift from God's grace. It is hope with us remembering that God is with us and remembering who we are, that we come together and we are able to work towards justice and righteousness and life for all. The beautiful vineyard that God has envisioned. Advent is coming. Advent is a time to reconnect, reorient, recenter, to forgive, to find redemption, to find new life in the one that God has sent us, to lead us in the way of life, the way of justice, the way of faith, the way of love. Of loving God with all of our heart, mind, and strength, and loving our neighbor as we love ourselves. As Laura said, we have to identify and profess all the ways of destruction today and lift them up to God. We have to grieve. And we also need to take that as an opportunity of a calling for God, from God to us, to reorient, to use the gifts that God has given us and become that vineyard that Christ teaches that we are in faith, hope, and love. Friends, everything you need for the vineyard to be beautiful, to be bountiful, to be life-giving, you have. I see it every week in you. May it continue to grow as you continue to focus on your faith and learning more and more what it means to be a disciple of Jesus Christ. And may you all be known as a beautiful flower, a life-giving tree in the garden of God. All praise, honor, and glory be to you, O